Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about DisplayLink, in particular DisplayLink that's used in many sort of these Lenovo laptop docks. And now the DisplayLink chip itself is what's used to generate video signals like from these HDMI or display ports out of just a USB signal. So from your standard computer, if you want to connect some more monitors or use them as a laptop dock, you're most likely going to be using a DisplayLink chip. Now on the bottom of most of these you can actually see the DisplayLink sticker. And if you open one up carefully, you can actually see the DisplayLink chip inside. Now, on Windows, to make these work, it's simple as plugging them in and waiting for Windows to automatically install the drivers. But on a PC like this, running Linux Mint for example, it's not so easy. If we plug this one in, as we can see, absolutely nothing happens. So in today's video, we're going to be showing you how to set up the drivers for these. First things first, something that's interesting is, despite there's no video output from this, the Ethernet on many of these docks does still work. So if we just plug our Ethernet in here, it should start working. Now this is interesting because the Ethernet on these docks actually comes from the same DisplayLink chip as the video. So some of the drivers must be present, but not the ones for video. Now to get these drivers, what we're going to want to do, at least on Ubuntu, is go to just any old browser and search DisplayLink drivers. Ignore the Google crap and go down until you find the Synaptics website. Go on here for the driver downloads and you're going to want to select Ubuntu, as Linux Mint is Ubuntu based. Now you're going to want to ignore this for now and immediately scroll down here and download this file. Now you could install this using terminal, but we're lazy, so we're just going to double click it and click install package. Enter your password and now we wait. Once that's done, we can go back to the website and look at these commands here. Ignore this first one and we just need to run sudo apt update and sudo apt install DisplayLink-driver. Now it's done installing, we just have to reboot our computer. And when we boot back up, the driver should be working. One important thing to note is if your system has secure boot enabled and you don't have the secure boot password, this isn't going to work. This is some weird quirk in the DisplayLink driver requiring secure boot to be set in some weird way. As we can see, when we log back in, we should have a second monitor appear. And if we go into display settings, it will just appear as if it were a normal monitor plugged straight into this laptop. So we can adjust the resolution, sizing, whatever. Completely normal. Now on to some performance testing. Here I've simply loaded up WebGL Aquarium and given it some time to settle in. I'm running about 17-18 FPS. And as we can see, our CPU is absolutely slammed. Now what we're going to do is plug in the DisplayLink dock and see how much it affects performance. Now the dock is plugged in, it really hasn't affected performance much, and we can even put beat up on the second monitor. And as we can see, we've dropped a couple, 1 or 2 FPS maybe. It's not a huge difference though. Now, if we move the fish onto the DisplayLink monitor, which I've set to run at as close to the laptop's built-in monitor resolution as possible, we can see that we have basically the same performance. Running this through the DisplayLink adapter really isn't hurting performance much at all. So, even on Linux Mint, it does work okay. Occasionally you can get bugs where the mouse cursor gets stuck on the second monitor or something weird like that, but overall it's been quite reliable. To actually set up the DisplayLink driver on Arch Linux, you need to get the driver from the AUR. This can be done with a few simple commands that I've left in the description. Once it's installed, it should work quite reliably. I have been using it on my main PC for several months now and it's worked well. Now we've got WebGL open and a window of PSOL, we can see how much the system resources we're using to run WebGL Fish at about 50 FPS. I don't know why it's running so slow. Let's increase the fish. Anyway, this is just different systems to what we were testing on last, so it should perform a little better. As we can see, and the CPU is doing some. Now we are plugged into the DisplayLink dock over a USB 3.0 connection, and we should get our second monitor. There we are. Now if we were to just put something like BTOP on it, we can see how much that affects the WebGL Fish FPS. As you can see, it hasn't dropped too much, although it's not bad, hasn't impacted performance too much. Now if we put the WebGL Fish on the DisplayLink monitor, once things settle down, the FPS has dropped slightly, but it's still performing quite well. So not bad. Now we're going to check out DisplayLink on Android. On Android, like on this S10, if you use the big USB-C dock, by default with no driver installed, when you plug it in it will charge the phone, and it will Ethernet driver will also work. So all the USB ports and stuff on the dock will also work in this mode. As you can see, we've got Ethernet up top, but if you actually want to use DisplayLink on Android, you have to install the driver, or really it's more of an app. Now, Synaptics do have an APK for this app on their website, but it's easier to just get it from the Play Store. The app can be a bit tricky to get working properly. The reviews really speak a lot about that. Now we can just open it. Click refresh a bit. Okay, start. And as you can see, we have the thing up on the computer. And it's just a simple screen mirror. I mean, obviously, if you get the phone screen to rotate by, let's say, opening a game, it will also rotate on the mirror. But unfortunately for Samsung, it doesn't seem to support DeX at all. It just doesn't seem to work. If we go into DeX mode, it will just mirror the default phone screen, which is a bit disappointing. Somehow though, this does work supposedly on older phones. Here we have a Sony Xperia XZ. Now the USB on this thing's a bit finicky, so we have to use the dock as well. But all that's doing is just going in line and acting as a USB hub. Now if we plug that in and get rid of Sony's crap. Detect, OK, refresh. Refresh, and as you can see, it's come up. Now because this phone is a 16:9 screen, it does work a bit better for like games and whatever, because the screen matches the resolution better. If we just find something that will go into full screen, like maybe Chrome, and turn on auto rotate, that might help. As you can see, it does mirror the phone screen quite nicely, and this does use quite a lot of the phone's resources, and so I'll slow it down a bit, but I mean, what do you expect? This phone's over 10 years old. Another unfortunate thing is multiple displays does not work. It doesn't even seem to mirror it across them. It will only display to one of them. I have tried this and it just doesn't. You only get a picture on normally the first display you plug into the DisplayLink adapter. But that's a bit of a shame. Besides that though, it can be useful if your phone does not support HDMI out natively. Like if you have a Samsung A series or just a cheap phone.